What's up, everybody? It's Matt Johnson. We're back with another episode of Real Estate Uncensored. This is the place where you get actionable ideas, insight, and inspiration to turn your real estate career into a life of freedom. We have a killer returning guest with us today, Jay Niblick of Wise Hires here, and we are talking about the early stages of a team, how to hire your very first couple of people, what roles those are, how do you know you're ready, what to ask them, all that good stuff. We also talk about a little bit about what happens when you hire somebody that gets a little too big for their britches and they think that they want to market and brand themselves instead of branding under your team and under your name, and how do you handle that? So we've got a bunch of stuff to get into as always. First of all, fresh off the weekend and full of beer, I imagine, or something like that. Greg McDaniel, my partner in all crime real estate related. What's up today?
What up, dude? Yeah, man, we were telling some funny stories of incidents that took place at the beer event over the weekend, which I found was very humorous. Thank God I pulled that one off because it could have been a disastrous moment.
Yes.
Future podcasts coming up on this topic.
Yeah, exactly.
It really could be. But then I got to go and I got to do my second radio show with KGO. That was an absolute blast to get to go out there. And we found out that we actually go live to about 50,000 people on that radio show. They told me those numbers. I'm like, there's 2 zeros and a comma and a 5 begins that? Holy macaroni. So yeah, it was a mind-blowing event when they're like, yeah, we go roughly to about 50,000 people. There's no pressure.
You say that till afterwards.
Yeah,
exactly. So Jay, you are also coming back from an interesting little vacation. It's been a while since we had you on the show. At least I think it's been over a month. So you had a very good trip. So first of all, welcome back officially.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Always good.
So we're pumped to have you back. So tell people a little bit about first of all, tell people a little bit about the trip and then what you do and what Wise Hire is.
Well, I got married this summer, so this was the honeymoon.
Congrats.
So we had a really cool time hanging out in Rome, and then spent most of the time down in Sicily. So rented what I thought was a really small car because I drive a large truck over here in the States, and I thought this little 2-door convertible BMW would be really tiny because I could put it in the back of my truck here. Nah, it's still a land yacht over there. I mean, everything over there is a Fiat 500, and that's a good sized SUV for them. That was fun. Spent like 6 days driving around all over Sicily, or 6 hours driving around all over Sicily one day, and it was just, dodging in and out. I was having a blast, but my lovely wife was not so happy about passing on back roads, trucks filled with watermelons.
Yeah,
but
exactly. It looks like the opening sequence of a Bond movie.
That's right. That's what the sport button is there for.
Exactly.
Over at
There's no sense
Hire,
in driving the ultimate driving machine if you're not going to drive the machine.
the button, it should default to sport mode. I don't know why you would not.
Exactly. All right, so Wise Hire.
Wise Hire, we're here. I'm one of the co-founders at Wise Hire, and we help real estate teams grow their teams. We help you guys use our DISC assessment and values assessments to help you get better team members and make sure it's a better hire, simply put.
Yeah, love it. All right, and we've already got some people jumping on, even though we went live a little bit early than our usual time. We were a couple minutes early. So Veronica Jones, Paul Franklin, Stevie Hahn, Chad Caseman, what's going on, guys? We appreciate it. Jeff Smith says, what's going on, gangsters, here from Saskatoon. So, guys, let us know where you're at so we can all keep you in mind for referrals. And let's dive in with our first question. So this is from Mike Rowland. It says, what was the first hire you made when you got to the point where you could no longer handle 100% of the business yourself anymore? Do you hire a transaction coordinator, assistant, home showing agent? Do you try to recruit team members? And so let's start there, because that is a lot of the place that people find themselves in. It's really kind of it is the problem that prompts people to first start thinking about starting a team, even if that's not necessarily their original ambition. It's that point of getting too busy where they could be taking on more clients, and they realize, oh crap, if I take on a new client, I'm going to spend 90 hours a week working these transactions, and that's no fun. So how do you think about the problem?
Jay. You want me or Greg?
Mm-hmm.
Jay.
Mm-hmm. The answer is, which of those roles should you hire? The answer is yes. Because every one of them is a first hire that we've seen in our experience. Okay, so maybe more often than not, an administrative assistant is the title of choice. A generic universalist administrative assistant, maybe it's virtual to begin with. Most of the people leave the virtual when they get to a full-time status. Yeah. But I've seen it be all. I've seen people that made their very first hire was an ISA. So what you said was so important is that you can't handle 100% of the business. The question becomes which 100%, which percent of that 100 do you want to not do? Because everybody's a little different. Some of these entrepreneurs, they're not all the same personality style. Some may be DCs, right? On the personality standard side, there might be a DC that's the team leader, or a future team leader, but they're crushing it in sales. And I've seen lots of different personalities make it as a salesperson, as a single. They're probably pretty efficient at the technical work and getting some of the detail stuff done, and they're okay with that. And they may say, I want an ISA who goes out and does all the minutiae of getting these people scheduled, because that could be reproducible and that can save me all this time. Those types of people I see do showing agents as their very first hire, because they're like, I'll take 2 hours with my seller and I'll let somebody else take 23 hours with the buyers, because it's still going to be 3%. But then other personalities, we've got one here with us, would rather say, tell you what, let me find somebody to do this because I'm going to focus on these buyers instead and get some admin. So the first thing to ask is, what don't I want to do and what shouldn't I be doing? And that's the first person to fill that role and take that off your plate, give you bandwidth.
Yeah, like data entry. I was having to do data entry on Friday, and I just literally wanted to put my head through my desk. Just stop the pain, just knock myself out and call it a day. I was happy. We just come off the show. I was full of energy. I'm like, woo, lots of fun. Then it literally 5 minutes into data entry, I'm like, what? I'm still awake. I'm still here. It's horrible. Horrible. So I would definitely do data entry, some sort of like S&C, task, a team manager, or team assistant or something along those lines. Like we were talking about, Jay, I love going out and showing houses. It's an adventure for me. It is putting a puzzle together and seeing if I can do it. That's where I'd rather spend my time working with, and I love my sellers, don't get me wrong. I would rather work with a buyer because the sellers sometimes are more opinionated, a little bit more, judgmental. They have expectations. And for a buyer, man, they're like a puppy, man. They were just running down the street with their ears wagging and just tripping over their own paws, like, woo, house hunting, boom, 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 they're rolling around.
Greg's here. Greg's here.
Yeah, Greg's here. Let's go look at houses. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a hero to somebody.
You're like, you got your nose up against the window when you pull up to meet them. They sensed you coming from a block away.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, there has to be that. Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to Sean Kokoska here, I think this was about a week ago, and he was mentioning, so he was at one point the president of MAPS Coaching and now runs his own coaching organization. And he was talking about how he got started, and he actually was Greg, the same way as you are. Like, he preferred working with buyers over sellers, which I never knew about him. He scaled up his business to where he was doing 100 buyer transactions a year.
Wow.
So you talk about a showing assistant, Jay, being like one of the first hires. Like, yeah, if you enjoy working with buyers and you like that side of the business, but you just need more leverage, a showing assistant is a great way to do that. So yeah, it is interesting. He's one of the only guys, I will say that, he's one of the only guys I've run across that's been able to do that. In fact, the only other person I know that's scaled up a buyer side business to any massive level was someone on, I think it was Greg Harrelson's team, does 60 plus deals a year, and they're all buyer sides. That's the only other person I know of that has scaled it up that far. But it is interesting that you've seen pretty much just about any role be the first hire. So I like the idea of starting with what you don't want to do, and then figuring out how to get that off of your plate. You mentioned the full-time thing, right? So most people start out virtual. I've done virtual. I've got people that are here locally. I've got people in the States and stuff like that. Let's talk about the trap a little bit of hiring your first full-time person and then asking them to essentially do everything you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And how does that usually go down?
Happens a lot, especially small team. Part of it, leading off on that last point, many times they're not only asking, and they're asking the right question, not only can I do it or could I do it, but should I do it? And so I think it's a legitimate argument often to also say, as the CEO of this company, if somebody can do that at the same caliber you can, so let's go back to a DC, they could do the data entry. But if you're the chief rainmaker, if you're the lead agent, if you're the CEO of the company, should you? When a $23 an hour person could do it at the same level with the same rigor that you do, because they're also a high C. So that can lead people to say many times there's too much that they don't want to do, because they'll go between my personality and it's not being a strength and the fact that I need to be out selling, nothing but generating revenue. There's all kinds of stuff. And so to Matt's point, they'll get somebody in and go, punk, here's the bucket of shit that I don't ever want to do. And who do they dump it on? And it's everything. And so I had a conversation just today where they're looking for someone who come in to be an administrative assistant. They want that same individual to do transaction coordination. They want them to do social media marketing and SEO work.
Mm-hmm.
So in a personality assessment framework, you're looking for somewhat of an SC with the administrative assistants, not too high in the upper 60 range, so they're flexible. But you want a transaction coordinator, which normally sees a higher level of C. And the I and the S maybe even go down a little bit because it's just more of a quality assurance, accountant type of personality. You want someone to do SEO, which still has to be an SC, but the social media side of it usually brings the I up and the creativity and the aesthetics and the values goes up and the regulatory goes down. You're not going to get anybody that has the perfect profile for all of that kind of stuff. And the one person on the call, there were two of them, actually said, do you think we could have them follow up with some prospects to see if they could get them on the calendar? So it was almost like they were thinking, wow, well, shoot, on Thursdays in the afternoon when you don't have anything going on, would you dial Mrs. Smith and see if she could get an appointment scheduled with her? Not organizing an existing contracted client. It's like, well, there goes an ISA component as well.
Yeah.
You can't. There's no way you can find one person to take everything you don't want to do. It's great that you don't want to do it and you get it off your plate, but you have to think about, can one single human do all of this? And it's just not feasible. Matt, what'd you say about getting a couple of different virtual assistant specializations?
Yeah, so that was one of the big breakthroughs for me, was I started off, like when we started the show, I had one virtual assistant and I started passing off various roles of the podcast business off to her. And then as we started taking on clients, I initially just had a very small core people of people that I really trusted. And each one of those core people were doing multiple different things. The thing that I actually set the business free to grow was stopping all of that, specializing and building a really true assembly line where every person focused on just the thing that they were best at. And I just knocked them all down to where they were all like part-timers. And then for the people that performed, as the business grew, then some of them would take on more hours. But I didn't let anybody do anything other than specialize in what they were the best at. So we have so I took away all the audio editing from my designer. She does design work and she produces a Real Estate Uncensored, right? So even though she can edit audio, she can edit video. Now we have professional audio engineers, professional video editors, a professional writer who replaced me, right? That was one of the very last things I handed off, was the thing that I'm best at, which is the writing and the quality control. So at every level I specialized. It was actually way easier. The only thing that it does is it introduces just a little bit of friction. There's a little bit extra communication by communicating with two different people, but it's more than well worth it because you can get the right person to fit that role. And it made everything a lot smoother. It made it easier to communicate with the right person that was doing one thing that they were good at rather than 10 different things. So yeah, that's been my experience. And so if I were in that situation where I had those types of things to hand off, and I had 40 hours a week to give, there's no way I would hire one person. I would automatically go and hire two VAs at 20 hours a week rather than hiring a VA at 40.
Yeah, well, and I mean, just hours-wise, they could all be the same price. But the key is what he's talking about, people, is making sure that he doesn't just not care about what he's outsourcing. Just get it off of my plate is good enough. This is your work. This is your baby. You better make sure that it's, the individual that takes that is somebody that's ideally suited for it. And as much as it may be unimportant to you, data entry and details and all these other tasks that people are like, thank God, I just don't have to do it. I don't care. You have to care. You've got to stop and say, but this is my child. This is still my business. Is this individual a good daycare for that kind of thing? Or who's going to watch my puppy? Or,
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful way to go about it. It's a safe way to go about it, too. That's not a huge commitment to get into a part-time contractor sort of 1099 situation. Because sometimes you don't make the good hires anyway. Even we make mistakes on our end. That's what we specialize in. So it's good to not necessarily have – I'm a big fan of on-the-job and training and probationary periods, 90 days or so. Because until you see it all driving and running and on the track, you just don't really quite know for sure, did we get it right? Is it going to be a good fit? Are they going to be happy here too? So that's a safe way. If you're starting to hire, if this is one of your first hiring scenarios, what he's describing is also really great because I need to develop my skills as a hiring person. Mm-hmm. This is the very first time. I may not be very good at it. So
Greg can tell you about that. We've both shown up to calls like that and gone, what are we talking about again? Like who, what? Yeah, and not having any interview questions. And yeah, I think anybody that hires for the first time finds out pretty quickly, like, oh wait, I'm not automatically good at this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I fired myself from the hiring portion of my real estate team. So I just, I'm like, dude, you have 2 legs, 2 arms, and a heartbeat. Okay, cool, man. Join the team. Horrible decision.
Yes.
I mean, being strategically, decisive on who and where and how to hire people. I mean, that's what I like about WiseHire. I mean, that you guys actually give us questions to ask based upon the responses they gave from the DISC test. So you really make it stupid proof to go in and hire people and at least do the interview. Somehow I even managed to screw that up. So I'm still going to work with my coach over at WiseHire to be like, okay, so I really kind of shit the bed. How do I make it clean and good, and how do I make it an enjoyable experience for both me and the interviewee? And I mean, it takes time, though. I mean, isn't that right, Jay? It takes time to get the right person, and that's why you do the preliminary run of 90 days to see how they're going to show up when it's not the most perfect day, when they don't feel 100%, when their weekend wasn't absolutely awesome.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's tough. Hiring is tough. Even with our science and the profiles that we're bringing to bear, and we're going to be constantly adding new educational content and a methodology that you can even have a more scripted session to follow of, starting with some scorecards and building the model of who you want them to be and what you're called. We're bringing out even more and more structured steps inside the system. You are getting married to somebody in 30 or 60 or 90 days. Mm-hmm. I mean, if it takes you 3 months, and if you think about it the really harsh way, you're getting married to somebody. If you offer someone a full-time job, you're getting engaged if you ask them to come in virtually part-time or part-time with 2 hours of understanding, 3 hours of understanding. I see their profile. I look at their resume. That's like swipe left, swipe right. I like what I see there. Now I'm going to go do a phone interview and then maybe a live interview.
Yeah.
That's it. You got a job. We're married. You're employed. You're here. You're going to be responsible for this huge chunk of my business. And I probably don't have 120 minutes of physically talking to you under my belt.
Yeah. That's baffling.
And that's pretty average.
Scary.
Yeah. So it's
and
really
and that part-timer has way more effect on our finances than somebody we get engaged to.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
All right. And Veronica Jones, who is in an ISA role, is watching, and she says, that she's saddled with a lot of the same things. It's exhausting for her. So not only is she doing the company website, Facebook and Instagram accounts for both the brokerage and her team, I think, SEO, ISA role, and licensed agent, and keeping up with the agents' honeydews while they're out of town, and doing things for the property management sister company, all in one role, which is Yeah,
but I've seen her work. She does really good work, though. I mean, and she'll
here's the
make
deal.
it happen.
Yeah, here's the deal. I think what agents want, and I don't think they can articulate this, but they dictate this by their actions, which is they want the rock star to come in that really would be successful on their own, independent of whether they really have good systems and things like that. They want to plug somebody in, give them an opportunity to be successful, and have that person kind of take it and run with it. The problem is the person who's that good enough to do that is within 6 months to a year, they're going to figure out that they're good enough, and either they're going to want to be a licensed agent if you're in real estate, they're going to want to move on and go do something else. They're going to get a really great offer from somebody else. Some other opportunity is going to come up, and so what we want ends up, even if we find what we think we want, which is that rock star person, most agents are not disciplined enough to have that person build out the systems along the way. And so then what happens is they get locked into that person. And if that person leaves, if and when they leave, their business is screwed, right? Because then they got super reliant on one person. And I never want to be in that position. As much as I love all of my staff, and I think all of us do, we don't want to be in a position where we're really that tied to one person. We want to have the systems that back them up. And Jay, I'm sure you've seen that a lot, where agents come to you and panicking, going, "Hey, like my operations director is leaving, or they already left. Like they put in their notice, and now I got to replace someone that effectively runs my entire business." And it was all up in their head.
I had a case last year where they waited until the person went on vacation, and they hated the boss so badly because they were being mistreated that they turned their resignation in once they landed in their destination outside the country. So like, yeah, I got the office for the next week. Enjoy. 0 days notice. I'm out. So look, that role, tell me, here's the word that comes to mind when you're describing that nightmare role. That's Frankenstein.
Yeah.
I mean, that's leftovers, right? I mean, it's like all the stuff that I didn't get eaten the night before. It's all the stuff that I don't want to do. I mean, it's literally stitching together a Frankenstein of a job description.
Yeah.
Every piece of crap I don't want to have to touch is yours, and go do it and do it well. To your comment, Greg, she may do great work, but somebody who's got a great work ethic and, you know, could stand on their head and get all this stuff done. But how sustainable is that? It can't be that sustainable. You know, I mean, you're never going to get crazy performance in all of those areas at an equal level and then be able to keep them all. You kept reading. I thought you were starting to make stuff up at it for a minute, Matt. I was like, surely she didn't put all those duties down in one role.
No, she did. She did.
Yep, that's right in the Facebook comments. I did not exaggerate by a single thing. That was all in her post. Which brings up another good question, actually. So Amanda says, has anyone hired a buyer agent or showing assistant that had issues with that person wanting more glory and feeling like they are not the real agent if they build your brand? So Jay, how do you screen for that on the front side and figure out if somebody, you know, if they like? We always think of it in terms of the downside is, what if they come in and they can't perform? That is our worst case scenario. It's great. They don't perform, and now I have to get rid of them and I got to replace them. But there's the other side of it that we usually don't think about, which is what if they do come in and they actually do perform really well, and then what's the worst case scenario of that, which is that they want to then move on, do other things, right? So there's the other side of things. How do you screen out and how do you uncover some of those things in the interview process that might give you a clue that that's the type of person you're dealing with, is somebody that's a high performer, high achiever, who might be okay being with you for 6 months or a year, but is going to immediately want to go out and build their own thing?
Oh, I always want the latter. I don't ever want somebody who wants a ceiling right over their head in a little teeny crawl space. You know, I don't think you know, and I don't, by crawl space, I'm talking like, okay, you just entered at showing agent. This is all you'll ever do for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
You've got to have vertical growth. You've got to have opportunity for somebody to come up vertically or laterally. That, you know, Veronica, the last one on there, is perfect, because that should be somebody who's, the employer should be looking at her going, there's a plethora of things that you could do, and I love what you do. You get to pick. I need to trim this down. Which one of these do you love to do? Which do I think and you think you excel at the most and are most comfortable and interested in doing? And then start to specialize, and then bring somebody else in to do the rest until you can figure that out. Showing agents are usually the same, in my experience, unless it's a part-time person who's had their license and they just want some retirement or they want some side income. And you'll see that in the interview, because the personality is going to look just like a buyer agent. It really is. Now, not the hunter-gatherer buyer agent. You know, the D is still in the midline, 50 or so, which most buyers agents look more like an IS. But yeah. There, you should structure your practice, your team, where if they come in, you don't give them the choice. You don't force them, I should say, to make that choice. If I want to stay here, this is all I can do. Crawl space. If I want to go there, I have to leave. And the key to building a good team is to say, where else can they go? So maybe that buyer, the showing agent's revolving in every 6 to 9 months. But that's okay. I want to get somebody who's young with their license, who has no experience, and I can teach them there. So mine would be to turn the question around and say, how do I build a path where when that person lands, and I do find the grower that does want to do the best and is always looking to improve, there's plenty of space right here to expand. They don't have to go out. Yeah, that's a great point. Yep, and Veronica said, is commenting like, he's absolutely correct. My ISA role has fallen short because my focus has shifted from one duty to the next. And that is one of the dangers, is if you hire someone, whatever you think is their main role, if you then stack all this other, especially admin work, onto an ISA,
you do that and you stack on things that they're not good at, it takes them longer. It actually sucks down their energy level, makes them less likely that they're going to be really good at doing the one thing you actually need them to do. And in Veronica's case, the ISA role is extremely valuable, right? The ability to get people on the phone and set appointments is no joke like that. Right. And it's value. It's the most valuable thing she can possibly do with her time and with her energy, and diverting that over to property management, SEO, things that, she's probably not good at. And even if she is, it just draws your energy down. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that they're just good. They're just talented, and they attack whatever they do and do it at a certain quality level because that's just their personality. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't draw down their energy to do things they're not good at. Totally. Greg, you can follow up. Greg, you can do a lot of things. You can do all the paperwork, you can do all kinds of stuff, but it exhausts you and it takes you out of what you do best.
Yeah, 100% it does. That's why you have different team members. That's why teams became something. So is to take things off that you aren't good at. I mean, there's the argument there of like some people say, well, double down on what you're good at and let people do what you're not good at. Other people say, go get better at what you're not good at so that you can be well-rounded. Well, I'm agreeing on the side of be proficient in what you don't like to do. You don't have to be a master at it, but just know how the steps go. Then shuffle that off to somebody who finds that fun. I mean, if there's someone who likes to do data entry and loves to be detail oriented, not me, by the way, then that's going to be something that they're going to love. They're going to thrive on. Like Eileen, she always is on my ass about, did you follow up with this? Did you do that? Blah, blah, blah. And I love that because then she just gives me the things I need to do and I go off and do them. I'll do a call, do a video, follow up with somebody, but she reminds me to do them. I don't have to do all that legwork. Yeah. And she doesn't have to go on camera. So it's a win-win for both of us. Yes, she would rather be killed than go on camera. She actually did it one time for me when I really requested her to come in and do this interview. She gave me the look like she was throwing daggers at me. But she still bucked up and went up there, and I'm super proud of her. That's why she's a steel trap, man. That's why she does her job so well.
It's hard to believe it because sometimes what it is we don't like to do, we absolutely hate. But there is somebody out there, and we say this in the book, there is someone out here who loves to do what you loathe to do. As amazing as that might be, they love it. And it could be the most disgusting, distasteful piece of business that you hate to have to do. And it's crazy, but there is somebody who's like, oh, you're kidding me? That's the greatest thing in the whole world. I would love to have stacks and stacks of data to just enter or reams of documents to go through. And that's their
I literally just fell asleep while you were saying that.
Yeah, what? We're live on air. Yeah, I pop back up here.
It's like a trigger question, right? Like
it does. It does trigger me.
Trigger questions. Data.
Yeah. Greg just falls down. All right, so Glenn, our mate from Australia, says, I assume adequate attention has been paid to Greg's new face. My first exposure to babyface Greg, which unfortunately, Glenn, we have not paid enough attention to to Greg's face, which is a gross oversight on my part. So I would just like to publicly thank Greg for shaving down a little bit. This is the first time I've seen babyface Greg in a while too.
This is gonna be a thing. This is gonna be a thing now.
Oh, we're gonna make it a thing. And then let's take a step back because I've got one really good question that that'll probably send us out for the episode. So before we get to that. Jay, I want to have you tell people where they can reach out and connect with you guys and get some of the content that you guys are working on.
Oh, just go to wisehire.com, WIZEHIRE. And all the stuff's going to be there on the blog, 100% free educational content just like this. So awesome. Give, teach. That's
right. All right. So the question that I had in mind that caught my eye before we went on air was from Jennifer. It says, for those who hire team members, how do you define, expose, or score things like accountability, coachability, entitlement, and grit? So in other words, she says, interviewing to uncover these pieces has been a challenge for me. Admittedly, I would ask the candidate to rate themselves, but I like to measure this without the self-rating, and I've relied too much on gut instinct and then realize that things are out of alignment once they actually get kind of into it. So let me go back. I'll give you the list again. So accountability, coachability, entitlement, and grit. How do you uncover or score those kinds of elements?
So these are some of the softest of the softs. Right? So oftentimes people talk. Great question, by the way. Fantastic.
Yeah.
some people, they talk about soft skills and hard skills. Hard skills simply because they're measurable. That's where the original phrase came from. It's not because they're difficult or they're hard. They're tangible. I can measure them. I see you have a degree, and I see you went to this training and you have a license. Boom, hard skills, done. I can touch them. Intangibles or soft skills, these are the softest of the soft. These are kind of these real big ethereal. I get people all the time that talk about grit and character and other words like this. And there's some really big umbrella words. There aren't very specific pieces in the profile that you can look at, but there's things that you can get a hint on. So accountability oftentimes takes the interview process to really get to the bottom of that. And like I said, it's one of the softest of the softest. On the DISC report, the higher the C and the higher the S go, oftentimes the more accountable that person will hold themselves. It's just a natural trait, and D's and I's tend to not necessarily be the best at accountability. It doesn't mean that it's a lying case or a dishonest case. D's and I's, the higher the D, oftentimes the less introspective a person is, and so they tend to look externally at the world and say, if something didn't happen, the boss walks in the room and says, "What'd you guys do wrong? Who screwed up?" They're not likely to stop necessarily and say, "What did I do wrong?" So there's a difference between initial gut response of where did it go wrong, being externally focused versus internally focused. There's a difference in accountability if you mean once it's known that you did something wrong, do you own it? Do you take that accountability? So just know that certain traits like D's and I's sometimes are less prone to take that accountability. That can benefit them too, because if I'm overly accountable and 9 out of 10 doors get slammed in my face, it's my fault and something's wrong with me and I don't handle rejection well. So there's trade-offs in all of this stuff. Yep. When you're interviewing on accountability, one of the best things I found is asking, what's a situation where something didn't work in the past in last jobs? If they're an internal locus or an external locus, they're called, the people that are accountable will say, I wasn't the one that was able to fix this. It's my fault, and that's why I left or why I'm leaving. The ones that don't likely take accountability are the ones that say it was their fault. So why wasn't the last, what was one of the jobs that you hated the least, and why didn't it work out? Why'd you quit? Or were you fired? And they'll say, well, they wouldn't do any of this stuff. It was them, and they were bad, and they were horrible managers. If it's an accountable person, they tend to come off more as if they were what they were and it was horrible, or they wouldn't do this or the job didn't do that. So I decided, I'm going to take control of this and I'm going to remove myself from the situation. So it's subtle, but it's hard. There's no score that says, in the DISC and the values, we do have actually a coaching assessment that measures personal accountability. It's not in the WiseHire system because it's just deep coaching stuff. What were the other ones there?
So it was entitlement, grit, and I think we covered like accountability, coachability kind of in one. Yeah. And so entitlement's an interesting one. I'm assuming that being the negative thing that you're trying to expose. In other words, I'm assuming entitlement in this context means being overly having a sense of entitlement, I would think.
I would assume so. Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking as well. Again, one of the softer of the softs. Because a lot of that's a cultural background of, what's your self-esteem and how much do you think your shit doesn't smell? And, if you think I deserve this and they're going to give it to me and where is it? It's a double-edged sword. Do I like an entitlement to a certain degree, Goldilocks level with a salesperson? Yeah, because I want a person who says, well, but I want this role. I want to take that sale. Yeah. And somebody that's on too far the other end of the spectrum of, I don't deserve anything. Why would I go after this and get it? Right. Oh, woe is me. So you want to balance on how much self-esteem and ego drive they have and expectations and entitlement. It helps make them hungry. In the interview process, this just has to be a real pragmatic discussion of where do you see yourself going is one of the first tips that you start dealing with an overly entitled. And I think that's an important distinction to make. I like some entitlement. But not an overly high amount of entitlement.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't mind entitlement if it's performance related.
If they're accountable.
If somebody comes in and says, look, I'm going to kill it. I'm going to make you extremely happy, because this role is perfect for me. It's the next step in my evolution. And I want to do a really phenomenal job. like in the role. And then from there, we can decide if it makes sense for me to stay on, or if I take my skills somewhere else, or if the business is growing and there's another role with more responsibility, I want to be considered for that. That's what I would want to hear. I don't want to hear, well, if I come in and, everything's going well and the business is growing, I would assume that there's some, like some promote, that there's advancement and there's like, cost of living raises and like all those things that indicate like that it's tied to them like being there, like
Right.
tied to longevity, or they have like a big corporate expectation that there's like this regimented path that's laid out for them with raises that are tied to that as long as they just kind of show up and be average, that they'll just kind of be ushered into the next role, and that they get a commensurate pay, that goes with that next thing up. Like those that type of entitlement, not interested. See you later.
DS employee. I've been here so many years.
Yes.
Time for the next one.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it definitely depends on what their corporate background a lot of times is too, because they can not necessarily be that way, but they can develop some of those expectations depending on what their last couple of roles were in a job, where that's just kind of what they come to expect because that's the environment they came out of.
Exactly. No, I think these are great examples of, and maybe the reason he's asking this question is because these are why interviews are so important. We can get metrics on some things. We can get, hard skills are easy. The defined soft skills that we can bring to bear with a DISC and the values. Mm-hmm. This is still all that other completely ambiguous stuff that no profile directly measures that I've ever seen is valid. And it takes you really probing and looking. So to Matt's point, I think one of the things you can do best is ask an entitled person what they feel they're entitled to. And without stating that I'm talking about entitlement, you kind of see it somewhat apparent. If I ask an unentitled person what they're entitled to, you'll get a really wishy-washy so far into the spectrum. Oh, whatever you guys like, and I just want to serve you, and that's okay. And, and depending on roles, that may be okay. Whatever the aspirations are in your specific spot, that might be a good acceptable answer. Probably not, but that would be an extreme outlier. The normally entitled person, he's talking about a meritocracy. I'm fine with, I'd like this opportunity. I want to be able to get here. I want to be able to earn it. And they ask back, what are the different levels and how would I get to them? And if that discussion back and forth is, cool, that sounds awesome. The overly entitled person, when you ask, where do you want to be in 2-3 years? Where do you see yourself? And anything that mimics or rivals, I want to be the listing agent. I'm going to come in as your showing agent, and I think I should probably be able to handle lists in about a week and a month. And, why don't you go ahead and move me up, or can I even be on my own independently? You start to get some red flags like, wow, well, how do you think you're going to get there? Getting your license? You think that was all the reason you're going to have to get that role? No.
So, funny story on that front. There was a gentleman who came over onto my team 2 years ago. And he was a young gun, all ready to take over the world and everything else. And I think he'd gone to like maybe 2 years of law school, so he was an attorney in his mind. And he walked onto our team, and he thought, that his shit did not stink. Let's put it that way. He walked into me 2 weeks deep and goes, "Yeah, you know what? You're gonna need to make me full partner." I'm like, really? That's an interesting thought pattern. There's the door. Goodbye. And I never talked to him again. He failed out of real estate. So it's interesting with these different personalities. But when someone walked in and just had that audacity to be like, yeah, you know what, you've been doing it for 18 years, but no, I'm just going to need full partnership here if I'm going to be, if I'm going to feel like I'm going to be doing my job here because I'm worth it. And I'm like, you ain't worth shit, homie. You've proven nothing. You failed out at everything. So no, you do not deserve anything. Goodbye.
Well, and that's an interesting thing because the last element she was asking about as far as how you screen for is grit, which then, Greg, if in all the time I've known you, when you talk about what you're looking for agents, like my perception of it is that's probably the number one thing you're looking for is you want someone like you that came in and when the going got rough, you hit the doors for 6, 8, 10, 12 hours a day. Most people are not willing to do that. And Jay, I'd be curious what your perspective is on how you screen for this. But Greg, I know that's like. When you talk about like your ideal agent you'd like to have on your team, that's a lot of times what you talk about, and it's the exact opposite of the way most people are.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I want someone who's going to be someone's going to go and kick doors in, hypothetically,
right.
Just when shit gets weird, Don't actually break into people's houses.
Yeah, exactly. I know we're talking about door knocking, but not
showing
door
agent training 101. Don't actually kick the door in.
If the lockbox doesn't work, just kick door in.
That's right.
See option 2.
Right?
That's right. No lockboxes, no problem.
Oh my God! My first time ever showing a house, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know etiquette whatsoever. And so, I mean, what do you do when you go to your friend's house? You just walk in when you get there, right? So I just got the lockbox, didn't ring the doorbell, and I just walked in. It's this poor old woman. She's like, like grabbed her chest, and I'm like, oh no, friendly real estate agent, Gosh. Poor woman. I'm like, note to self, always knock on the door.
Killed Gam Gam.
I killed Gam Gam.
Killed Gam Gam.
All
right, so Jay, how do you
sitting on the table?
Yeah, or a shotgun.
All right, so Jay, what would you? What are some of the questions that you would ask that would uncover things like grit and determination?
Grit is, to me, one of the easier ones to determine in this. Still softest of the softs, but listen to a life story. And there's no one phrase or answer that's going to do it, but probe the crap they've gone through. Probe the worst jobs and what they tried to do. Probe some tough times in their life. Ask the life story. And then you've got to listen to as much of it as you can and very in between the lines pull out if that sounds like grit or not. You know, is this a person who failed out of school and went back and got their job and then paid for night school? You know, is this person that got pregnant and then had a baby and went back to night school and was working 40 hours a week at night, and they're hungry for something and they ground through it. Their last job, they couldn't figure out how to make this work, and so they figured out a way. You know, the Kobayashi Maru, that's grit. You know, they're like, hey, I'm not going to take no for an answer. The last time they got hired might have been I was rejected. We laugh about people that apply for the job when it says license required. I kind of like the grit, the chutzpah of a guy or a lady that applies and says no, and they answer no. No, I do not have a license, but I don't care. I still want to talk to you about why I would be a good person for you to hire as an agent.
Yeah, that's interesting. Greg, you've mentioned that to me the other day, that you've had some people come in through the hiring process that weren't licensed. And what was your impression? Was it grit, or was it they overlooked that in the ad?
They were just stupid. I mean, they are all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. They're like, I can sell real estate. And this one guy's like, I can sell cars. I'm like, good. Have you ever thought about selling real estate? Yeah, you make a lot of money.
Entitlement.
Really. Yeah, it was entitlement. I mean, he was nice.
Yeah.
I mean, when I had the interview, you could feel the energy in the interview. Just like, yeah, this is not going to go anywhere. So I just cut it off. I'm like, it's been fun. Go with God, my child. We'll never speak again.
Yeah.
But
yeah. If it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I know I don't meet all of your requirements, but I feel like I'd be really good. I mean, my dad got the best job of his life years and years ago from doing exactly that. I remember him telling that story, 10, 15 years ago, whatever it was. Just going in and basically saying, all that stuff, like anything that I don't already know, I can quickly learn. And of course, he got the job. He was there for 10 years, and it was great. So I'm all on board with somebody coming in and saying, look, you need these 17 things or whatever. I'm good at 10 of them. I'll get good at the other 7. Just give me a chance, because here's what I've done in the past. And then I want to look for like history of achievement, you know, whether there's been things that they've won or commitments that they made that they had to struggle to follow through on. Those are some of the things that I look for. Jay, you mentioned just kind of the life story part. Are there, circumstances that hit them that were outside of their control, or mistakes that they made that they had to fight hard to come back from? Those types of things. I look for that. So, it's interesting that you say it's one of the easier things to look for. I wouldn't have guessed that, but I do like I'm glad to hear it.
I think when it comes to divining, and these are all examples, character is the other one I would add to that list that he didn't, because it's like, well, define exactly some of these things for me. When it comes to divining all of these, and you have to really do these in the interview, this is where you get that sense. Grit to me pops out more than anything else, because it tends to be more blatantly obvious with anything you had to do with obstacles in your life. People, here's the other thing behind it, grit is a positive. So one of the reasons it's easier to pick out is because people may try to hide entitlement. People may try to hide a lack of personal accountability. People are going to accentuate grit, and they're glad to talk about how they ran into a brick wall, what they did to get around it in that circumstance. And don't just talk business, just talk life stories. Say, in your life, since you can remember in school, what's some of the biggest obstacles that you can think of? And you may be talking with a young person that's been lucky and hasn't ever had to really have that fortitude. They've not been through any kind of a crucible. It's just a guessing game at that point. You don't really know. Big fan of the 90-day probationary period too, because again, those are the things that the negative ones you don't expect to see, and they're not likely to show you. They show up pretty blatantly, though. You can see that entitlement. You just gave examples of it. You can see if they're going to take accountability and if they'll be there. And so even people say like, well, 90 days isn't anything. A week, 2 weeks, if it's a really big problem. 3 months in, those things, those cracks and flaws will start to show. You'll see some of those and have some big concerns.
What's the conversation that you have with the person, at that 90-day mark? And I mean, how do you graciously be like, look, bro, like you just don't work? I mean, is it kind of that blunt, or is it literally you have to be more tactful because you don't want to get sued or have to pay unemployment or anything like
Jay,
that?
can you please provide legal advice on how to fire people?
Yes, please.
We would appreciate it publicly on record.
That's right. Why is the door locked? All the time. That's the easiest way. Close your building and have them go to a temporary building for the first 90 days. They don't know.
Work from home. Non-disclosure of actual location.
A lot of times when we bring somebody on over here, we'll have that same kind of approach, and we're looking for that 60, 90 days and see how it's working out. And almost every one of them, without fail, we don't wait 90 days. We're like, hey, we're 2 months in. We know this is working and everything's good. You do have to be tactful, and you want to be polite. And many times the reasons it's not working out isn't because they're bad people. It's just a bad fit. The job that they're doing isn't something they really love. So sometimes the easiest answer is, look, I'm glad we gave this a shot, and I value this and that about you a lot, but I don't think this role is the ideal fit for you. Not from our standpoint. So we appreciate it very much, but we're not going to make that formal offer of employment, at the end of this 90 days. And that's why the probationary period protects you legally as well. And not to give legal advice, but that's what we've been told, is that stating if you are bringing them on as an employee, that there is a probationary period.
Make sure and consult your local attorneys.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. As asterisk.
Not the guy that did 2 years. The actual got through the bar.
Exactly. The guy that actually has. Agree. All right, and then I'll throw this out there to anyone that has a team or would like to have a team, is that let's say you hire the wrong person. If you spend the 90 days in the right way and you're working with that person to build the systems of what they're doing, you may find in that 90-day process that they're not the best fit to run those systems, but theoretically in those 90 days the systems have gotten better. You haven't lost as much, and there's less fear of getting the wrong person out of that role and getting the right person in if you've spent those 90 days improving and documenting the systems of what they're going to do, and it actually makes it easier and faster to get the right person in and get them up and running faster. So that I think that will help. Hopefully that helps some people. You don't have to, like, that 90-day period. If you do end up with a bad hire, it depends on how bad it is and how bad it sets back your business is still entirely up to us as the team.
Which is kind of starting over. I have to learn how to hire, and don't be surprised if you screw up the first couple. But if you don't do that, you're never going to learn to get it right.
Yeah, exactly. And not to take that as an indication that you're just bad at it and therefore shouldn't hire and stay in your comfort zone where the business is at. Because that's I think that's definitely happened to all of us, and it's very tempting in that place where that first couple of hires don't work out to kind of go, oh, that's just not me. I should just stay a rock star agent. Well, it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with just your ability to get back up and get back in the ring.
Yeah, unless they were 6 and the first time they rode their bike, they fell over and said, screw it, and they never touched another one for the rest of their life. Get this, if I can't be perfect. It's
exactly.
It's tough. Hiring is tough.
Yeah.
Hiring sucks, as we say many times, because it's just really, really hard to do, even for people that are naturally great at it. So don't be so hard on yourself. Keep learning, keep trying.
Love it.
If there's not another question, there's one that came up to me last week, which fits in perfectly right here, which is somebody said on one of the channels, why would I even start a team? I'm making so much money right now. I'm doing, 700 million, and here's what I'm taking home. I think he actually wrote down the actual number. It's a couple hundred a year, and he's like, why would I take all the time away to find new members and then manage them and then share revenue on top of that with them? I'm doing fine where I am right now. So it's an interesting question because we always get stuck talking about teams and growing. Maybe the very first question is it right for you to even start a team?
Yeah.
Or when is it
Well,
right for you to start a team?
if that person's think of it as sharing revenue, that they may not be the right person to start a team. Because that is the not exactly the best way to think of it. It's called building a business. That's why. And then
expand on that a little bit. I mean, what do you say to somebody like that besides the sharing revenue? I agree.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, we might have to save that for another episode. And I always find it fascinating because there are people that I run up against in the world of real estate that they frown on the team concept specifically because you don't take 80% to the bottom line in profit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what other business on the face of the earth do you take 80% profit to the bottom line? Like that's called being self-employed. You can be a sole proprietor. You can stay a one-man band, and you can absolutely take 80% to the bottom line. That's not a business, though. That's a career, which is nothing wrong with that. You're a professional. That's called being a professional, right? A doctor, a lawyer, someone with maybe some limited staff, they might take 70, 80% home, and that's fine. That's all about them being ultra productive, and that may be fine for now. I guarantee you there's going to be a time when that person says, oh, crap, the business stops whenever I stop working, and that's not a fun.
Yeah.
So hopefully they realize it in the 30s and 40s and not in their 60s, which that sucks.
We always talk about trading time for money.
Yes.
I'm trading my time for your money. Mm-hmm. If I head off to Italy or Sicily, I'm not giving you my time. You're not giving me your money.
Yeah.
At 10 o'clock at night, I'm not giving you my time. You're not giving me my money. Saturday, if I want to go on vacation or just sit around the house and watch the game.
Right.
I mean,
if you're trading time for money, it inhibits your enjoyment of Italy and Sicily when you don't have money coming in.
That's it.
You want to have the money coming in while you're in Italy. That's the key.
Oh, we do. We fix that. But I'm just saying, when you get to that point, that's the biggest answer I think I've had these people say is they're looking at that from a totally wrong angle.
Yeah.
If all you're looking at is your top and bottom line and saying, I want to keep mine, as much of it as I can, then you probably should stay where you are. But you just got to be fine with, you better save a whole lot of it unless you want to work until you're 70 doing the exact same thing. Because someday you're going to stop or have a car accident or, need knee surgery. Or, something's going to say, I need to take some time not to do this. The moment you're not holding it up like Atlas, it's falling. The margins start to fall, or the revenue does.
Yeah, the revenue, exactly. All right. So, Jay, how do people learn more, connect with you, all that good stuff?
Wizehire.com. WIZEHIRE. We got a bunch of good content over there, and I think the best way to do it is also dial in next time we do these because you guys got great content too.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
We try.
And speaking of our content, you can rate, review. Make sure to give Jay a shout out if you leave us a rating on iTunes and all that good stuff. You can grab all the links to that or at reuncensored.com. So it gives you links out to wherever you'd like to go, or you can just look us up on your Apple Podcast app and leave us a review right from your iPhone. So whichever works best for you. We had some awesome people watching. Gail Zentek dropped in, Sean Caldwell, Glenn Twiddle, Veronica Jones, of course. Thank you so much for your questions and letting us know kind of what your ISA role has expanded into, which is we feel for you. So hopefully that is not permanent. But Greg, how do people reach out and connect with you?
Guys, it's right there on the screen. Go to bookmcdaniel.com. Again, it's bookmcdaniel.com. You guys will get book 30 minutes with me. Let's talk about EXP. If you guys are looking like we're talking about right now, about building wealth, not just a paycheck, that's what EXP can do for you and will do for you in the coming years. So if you want to go off to Italy and drive like a crazed American on Sicily's roads and freaking out your new bride, this is a perfect company for you guys to come over and work with us at so that we can help you live the life of freedom. I mean, that's truly what EXP can do for you. So go to bookmcdaniel.com. Let's chat, guys. That's me, Matt. Now pick a color, home cheeser.
Oh man. Okay, hang on. I gotta find something good here. Go with royal blue.
Royal blue. All right.
Okay.
Well, guys, we love you to pieces. Thank you for watching. We bring people like Jay out to you guys so that you guys can, get awesome personalities and, opinions of things that are outside Matt's our scope of deep knowledge. So, Jay, thank you for coming on again. We really appreciate you. Guys, if you like this, share this. Give us a review on iTunes. Know that Matt and I truly, truly love you. We're going to keep making these podcasts to keep bringing knowledge to you. So, until the next time, guys, peace out, ninjas. We're gone.